There's one division in the National Football League that sets itself apart from all the rest. With the goal of winning a Super Bowl, there's only one division that every team in the division has at least one and multiple Super Bowls, and that is the NFC East. And that's exactly what we're talking about here in our NFL division previews. So stay tuned for best bets, expert injury analysis, fantasy football takes, and team breakdowns. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I'm one of your hosts here, the Degen Docs, and I'm joined by my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, a.k.a. Professor Locke. How you doing today, brother, on a wonderful day talking about the best division in football, the NFC Beast, the NFC East?
Well, for one, we're doing this on a Friday at 1 o'clock. And for those of you that don't know, my bedtime's about 9 o'clock outside of the NFL season. So I'm loving this. But I don't know if your take as far as like every team in the division winning a Super Bowl really matters. Because, as a Steelers fan, I hope the Browns never win a Super Bowl. And I don't care if the Ravens ever win another Super Bowl, the Bengals ever win another Super Bowl. It's like you're giving your rivals a little bit of a leg up there.
Well, look, before 2017, I was right there with you when the Eagles did not accomplish that feat. But now they have. So I've come to the reality that, taking a little bit of the SEC mantra, we just play in the best division in football, right? What the goal is being a Super Bowl. Now we can all collectively talk shit, but at least our teams have actually been there and done that. So I do understand it. 2017.
If only the SEC would, win a national championship within the last couple of years, I would agree.
All right, Buckeye. Let's calm down.
Up in the Big Ten would say otherwise. So.
Yes. But no, look, trust me, 2017 was a hard year, but we got to cope with something, right? But I am stoked to be talking about the NFC East. I've got my favorite NFC East shirt on. Just a quick flash there, and back to PG show there. Life is simple, talking about the best conference here in the NFC East, best division, with our best bets, sharp picks. We're going to, again, like every episode we do here in this division preview series, we're going to go team by team, break down, free agency additions, subtractions, big takeaways, give some fantasy takeaways, talk about the major injuries coming into the season, then talk win total futures and give it our best bet for each team in this division. But before we get on to that, some news. We are in mid-July now. Training camp and news is actually flowing. So we actually got a decent bit of news here for y'all, which we'll always break down at the top here. Rashee Rice, Chiefs wide receiver, up first. So, kind of seemingly out of nowhere, we got a resolution in the case. And I think it was a little bit more of a plea deal, but essentially what it boils down to is 5 years of probation time, 30 days of jail time, and now it is up for the NFL to decide what that suspension looks like, and it will be this season, it seems like. So really quickly before I get your take, one, this is obviously for him being a knucklehead and driving around, and really he put people's lives and his own lives in danger, with the whole speed and crash and just kind of walking away from the situation and, whatever was going on there. Obviously he's a tremendously talented kid. Hopefully he learns from this. Thankfully, nobody was, fatally injured, no deaths or anything like that. So hopefully the kid can just get his potential, but kind of getting more of like fantasy football wise, what are you expecting this suspension to be? And where does this kind of, I know he wasn't super high in our rankings, but I know a lot of people were taking him like turn of the first, second round. What does this do for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely a little bit higher going into the fantasy realms on Rashee Rice as you were. I think he was a guy that was just like on the fringe of the top 15 for me. But obviously, I don't know exactly what good old Raj will do as far as the suspension. It could be 3 games, 6 games. It seems like they just make up numbers from time to time, and they just throw out
and it doesn't always match what seems to be the offense. So who knows?
Exactly. So who knows exactly how long it'll be, but it does seem like now that the um, things are
Courtroom.
things are now moving again. I wouldn't be surprised if this was to start the season. We still have a good
Yeah.
month and a half until week one, so I would guess probably the first 3, 4, 6. I
Yeah.
don't know. Weeks will probably be missed, which opens up opportunities for Hollywood Brown and those other guys
Yeah.
there in Kansas City.
Yeah, no, I think 3 to 6 is probably a good estimate. I mean, I've been pretty high on. I like Xavier Worthy. I think
Yeah,
he stepped up. I think this is going to be allow him to get even more. But
yeah,
depending on where he falls in redraft and what it may be, like what his ADP is, I do think Rice is going to be able to come on strong. Back half
yeah,
of the year and things like that. So I don't
yeah.
think. I mean, it's better than an injury, right? As far as
Sure.
looking into his season outlook.
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily be afraid to draft Rashee Rice.
Right.
Probably not first couple rounds because he's going to be missing a handful of games because
Right.
of the suspension,
Right.
and he's a guy that had a pretty major injury last. We're not thinking that he's going to um, you know have a huge detriment in terms of his performance because of that. He should be pretty good coming back, but
Right.
it's just one of those kind of wait and see things. But if he's there in the fourth round, something like that, um,
Yeah.
I'd have to give it a look.
I think fourth and fifth round would be kind of getting where it's a little bit more appropriate.
Yeah.
All right. And other news: Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams, who was on the pup and then just kind of announced he's retiring.
Yep.
So Mike Williams is now retiring, which now their second round draft pick Trey Harris, wide receiver at Ole Miss, just signed his contract. It's a good time for him to end that holdout and get kind of enveloped in the offense because
Right.
it's Ladd McConkey. And then it's like kind of looking around like who the hell else is going to catch the ball?
Right.
And I say catch the ball because Quentin Johnson is there, but he does have to reel it in.
He
So
does have to catch
there's going to
the
have
ball,
to be a
which
lot
has
of
been a problem.
opportunity for
Yeah.
Trey
Yeah.
Harris there. So I think he's a nice fun player out there, and he was pretty damn good at Ole Miss. Other news. Have you heard about the latest signing in Washington? The Commanders? No,
No,
not quite.
let's talk about this one first. Let's talk about this
All
one first.
right, fine. We're talking
I'm
about
absolutely jacked up that my boy TJ Watt will be around Pittsburgh for a few more years, signing the league's highest dollar amount outside of quarterbacks at 123 million, eclipsing that other guy in the NFC North, Myles Garrett, by $1 million a year. And I think from a Steelers standpoint, they had to do it. As a Steelers
right,
fan, I was hoping TJ Watt would give him a little bit of a hometown discount, but you have Aaron Rodgers basically for a year on a $10 million contract, and then
right.
most likely they'll be bringing in, hopefully, a franchise quarterback next year,
Yeah.
because we've been struggling in that category for a number of years now. But TJ Watt is the heart and soul of the team. It's just one of those things where if he's not on the field, they lose. If he is, they got a really good chance of winning.
Yeah, and you can tell Derek is excited by this deal. He had even made up an own graphic. So we have a new
Right.
graphic that we just launched. Purely, he was excited TJ Watt got a deal. So breaking news, yes,
A
the
little more free time
highest
on a Friday.
non-quarterback to out there. So non-quarterback player, $1 million more than Myles Garrett a year, which is pretty funny to keep that rivalry going. We will get to the AFC North sometime next week there for their breakdown. But some news with this division: the Washington Commanders have signed Von Miller. 36-year-old Von Miller coming over from Buffalo. He was a free
Yep.
agent. He announced it himself. We now have, the Washington Commanders that have 35-year-old Bobby Wagner, 36-year-old Von Miller, 30-year-old Laremy Tunsil, and 34-year-old Zach Ertz. They recently got together and took a team photo to show how excited they were for the upcoming season here. Look at that, Washington Commanders. Just a beautiful team photo to show. Yeah, they are now a glorified retirement home, and it worked out for them last year. But I think we'll talk about it. But I don't know if the odds are going to be quite in their favor this season. But hey, that's the first team we're talking about. So let's go ahead and get right into
Roll with it.
those Washington Commandos there. Maybe Redskins, maybe not. We'll see if that ever comes back. Whatever. We'll see how long this name
Can't
sticks.
say
But
that. Oh.
is that not? Oh, is that not allowed? I apologize. Um, Look, well, I can't wait for them to change their name again. They should just have a rotating like 3 years. Like in the military, you got
Every
to
two,
rotate
3 years.
every
Yeah.
3 years. So just keep it on PCS season. Every
Yeah.
3 or so years. Just bring in a new name and see what happens. All right. So let's get into this free agency breakdown. I'll go through the names. Derek's going to give us his take, and we'll get through this Washington Commanders team coming off one of their best years in a long, long time. 12-5 record. All right, so losses. Lost a couple of backup wide receivers, guys who saw time in De'Ami Brown and eliminated Zacchaeus. Lost their starting tackle, Cornelius Lucas. Dante Fowler is now to a division rival going to the Cowboys. Jonathan Allen, longtime stalwart of their defense, now on the Vikings. Cornerback Benjamin St. Juste, who was pretty awful anyway. And then safety Jeremy Chin, who did see time for them, is now in Las Vegas. As well as the kickers, and Gonzalez. They lost both their kickers, actually, but who cares about kickers? And then bringing them in, went and double. They took some, they gave some, and they took some from those division rival Cowgirls there, and Michael
Yep.
Gallup, who we'll talk about him, but did not play football last year. Debo Samuel coming over from San Francisco. Lermy Tunzel, another big free agent addition, come over for Houston. Von Miller, just talked about him. Javon Kinlaw is a decent player who's had some injury history. Jonathan Jones, Will Harris, and then their draft picks, rookie Josh Connerly, looking to immediately make an impact at the right tackle position for them. And then cornerback Trey Amos there, another guy who they're going to need to step up pretty quickly there. So, a decent amount of change here. They brought in a couple big names, nothing too crazy to the core of this team. Obviously, Jonathan Allen going out and a couple of those names brought in. What is your takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, and I would also add Marshawn Lattimore to that list, who they acquired late in the season last year.
That's fair. Absolutely fair.
That came in with a hamstring injury, didn't end up playing as much as they would have wanted him to
Right.
until into the playoffs. And we all kind of remember what happened in their last game against the Eagles and got absolutely blown out of the water. But from a losses addition standpoint, I think they brought in some big time names in Debo and Laramie Tunsil and Von Miller and all of these guys, but I don't know, if it'll necessarily equate to wins. It'll be interesting to see how this team looks, in Jane Daniels' sophomore year. Not too long ago, we were thinking that CJ Stroud was a top 5 quarterback, just like we do with Jaden Daniels. And now he's like being seen as a borderline top 15 quarterback. So
Right.
will Jane Daniels be able to continue to make strides into his sophomore year, or will he take a little bit of a step back as well? But from a defensive side of things, definitely much improved over the last few years. Last year they had a pretty good squad, and they made a couple of additions on that side of the ball. But we'll see. They did lose
Jonathan Allen.
Allen,
Yeah.
who was kind of their mainstay along that defensive line. I don't know if they necessarily replaced him with guys like Eddie Goldman and Javon Kinlaw. Kinlaw can be a good guy, but will he be on the field just health wise?
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point here. The sophomore slump can absolutely be real. Look, Jaden Daniels is a force. He is somebody who I don't want in my division because he's a good quarterback. But yeah, we said the same thing about CJ Stroud, and look what happened last year. Teams kind of figure it out a little bit, and especially Cliff Kingsbury and offenses, they tend to get figured out. They had a little bit of some rain all the way through last year, but historically, really the second half of the season they kind of get figured out, and now you kind of catch on to the gimmick a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is going to go. I think I saw something online, the interwebs, which are much funnier than I am, but they've said, imagine this team in 2020. This would be a squad. So, but it is the year of 2015 or 2025 going into 2026.
Yeah.
So we'll see. The age is a thing, and can they stay healthy? let's talk about some of these injuries here because I think it gets into some of the questions I have for this team.
Sure.
Offensive lineman Sam Cosmi tore his or his ACL in the playoff games. January
Yep.
18th, late in I believe that was the Detroit Lions game.
Yeah.
So this is an injury ACL. Excuse me. That takes 10 to 12 months around to recovery. He's only got 7.5 months. I mean, I want to hear your take, but I think there's a decent chance we don't see Sam Cosmi play football at all this year.
Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, just as far as Sam Cosmi goes, he's one of the best guards in the league. But
Yeah.
what will his timeline look like? Because injury timeline wise, it's not looking good for Sam Cosmi. Will he come on? The last handful of games, maybe into a playoff push if they make it, potentially. But I think that's a big if
Oh
still.
yeah.
Just I think it's just one of those things. Even at that 7.5 months at week one, if we stretch that into December, we're still barely at that 9 month mark.
Right.
And
Right.
that's like the earliest that we feel comfortable sending people back, and that's typically people that are not necessarily at that activity level, high impact level that an offensive guard would have.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, like you said, Sam Cosmi is a really good player. Offensive linemen do typically tend to handle this injury a little bit better,
We
but
do.
still, if
Yep.
you're going to risk sending him out there in the back half of the year, you are sending him out there with an increased re-injury risk, whether
No
it's
doubt.
to that ACL, the opposite ACL to a different body part. We
Yep.
see it all the time. So,
Yep.
a bit of a major risk, maybe major reward with Sam Cosmi if we're talking about getting him back near the back half of the year,
Sure.
maybe on the way to a playoff run. So we'll see. I would say, yeah, before December or January, I would not expect him to be on the field at all.
Yeah.
We'll see if they want to push the envelope depending on where they're at with playoffs and things like that. But yeah, they're going to have to fill that hole for the majority of the season to at least get them to the playoffs. And, that's either going to be Herbig or Andrew Wiley trying to
Right.
step up in that position there. Some other guys, the wide receivers we'll talk about quickly. Noah Brown was doing pretty well for them. And then he kind of had a scary injury last year where
Yes, he did.
we had a rib injury, but it was actually a kidney laceration. So
Mhm.
internal bleeding, internal organ damage, not something you want, especially on the football field. So this is a scary injury that requires medical clearance. We're kind of waiting for an update here, but it's kind of one of those that they kind of gotta really be cautious, and we'll kind of see where he's at. Hopefully, with 9 or so months or 10 months, he should be okay. But where are you at with Noah Brown?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, to me, they brought him in. So, it's I healing timeline wise, typically this is like a several month thing.
Right.
Sometimes earlier than that, but it just kind of depends on how severe the injury was to begin with. And like I said, I think they must know something to bring the guy in and sign him to the deal that they did.
Yeah, we'll kind of see. Another guy they brought in here was, and I think, yeah. So Noah Brown was there last year, but I think, did they get him like midway through the year or something like that? I
I
think that
can't
was kind
remember.
of what happened. Something, but Michael Gallup, who they brought in this year, this is interesting. Last year he was, after playing 6 or so years with the Cowboys, he was in Raiders camp during training camp, and then he retired and he kind of
Yeah.
quit football, right? And so now he's taking a year off of football. I know he had the ACL tear that he was coming back from and things like that. We've got a pretty like staunch opinion, like on that. If someone takes a year off football, whether the injury or not, like they're not going to hit the ground running and come back in. And most guys don't return to their pre level, especially if we're just talking about like taking a year off football.
Right.
Right. If we're talking about coming back from an injury and things like that, okay, there's some different factors at play. But how many times do we see guys like retire and then unretire and it actually work?
Right.
Right. So I had Michael Gallup here because I've got low expectations. But
I do
what
too.
say you? What are you thinking
Yeah.
about Michael Gallup here this season?
Lower expectations for sure. I think part of it will depend on how soon Noah Brown does come back,
Hmm.
because he might be able to squeeze in there with Luke McCaffrey or somebody like that for
Right.
that kind of wide receiver 3 spot. Because as we know, Terry McLaurin is an absolute force. I don't know why he hasn't signed a deal yet. But then you also bring in Deebo Samuel. So wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 are taken.
Right.
That third wide receiver position is kind of up for grabs, and that's where Michael Gallup might be able to get a few snaps in there.
Yeah. All right, let's head on over to the fantasy world here, and we're going to be talking about a guy you just mentioned, Terry McLaurin, Mister Consistency. 1,000-yard seasons. I think like every year, but his rookie year he's had. I mean, he's kind of almost similar to a guy we talked about in James Conner, and just some gun that just is going to consistently produce.
Yep.
And Terry McLaurin there. What are your thoughts about McLaurin here? Is this someone you're targeting yet again this season in the fantasy world?
Yeah, for sure. I think he was Jaden Daniels' favorite target by far last year. Finally has a quarterback, so I don't necessarily think that incoming Deebo Samuel will necessarily take too many uh, options away from Terry McLaurin. It
Right.
might just add to his greatness as a deep threat, just because you do have that true wide receiver 2 that has to um, you know take some attention away from him.
Yeah, I think if anything, you mentioned Devo, and I'm looking at the stats here. McLaurin with almost 1,100 yards, 500 yards more than any other wide receiver. Second leading receiver on that team was Ertz. I think
Hurts.
Devo may eat more into Ertz's territory and
Yes.
those yards and targets, especially Ertz another year older there. So
Yep.
that'll be interesting to see. And what Devo we're gonna get because
It'll be interesting to see how Kingsbury fits him into his offense, because he can be
right,
kind of an interesting offensive coordinator as well. Kind of like we talk about Sean McVay all the time and how he uses Puka Nacua in all kinds of different
right.
situations, similar to Kyle Shanahan, how he used Debo. And I think Kingsbury will probably do something fairly similar.
Yeah, he's got Samuel, he's got Austin Eckler, so he's got some like little gadget guys he can work with. So
Yep,
that will be interesting. They love their screens there in Washington.
for sure.
All right, and then Jane Daniels, he's coming in at our QB3 for us
Yep.
here, just under Lamar and Josh Allen. His rushing ability and the offense's ability to go. I think it's really hard to get him lower than that there. Um, we talked about the sophomore slump, but one of the things that he brings is his legs that,
Yeah.
someone like CJ Stroud does not. I mean, he rushed
Yes.
for almost 900 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. He just really has been effective in knowing when to run and then knowing when to get out of bounds. I mean, he definitely took a couple shots that they're going to have to talk to him about, and he kind of did that in college. But as little as his frame is, he has been a reliable kind of player, as someone who's been on the field, and
Yeah.
availability is a huge piece. So I
Yeah.
still think despite what we may see as effective as this offense being, it's really hard for him to get past QB3 in the
For
fantasy.
sure. And I think that's where the biggest difference between him and Stroud is, just his ability to run, use his legs, and get out of dodge when he needs to,
Right.
because he can be a major threat on the ground. And like you said, he can take some shots, but typically he does get himself out of dodge fairly quickly. And I'm sure over the past 3-4 months in the off season, he's probably continued to look into that and work on that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let's get on over to the betting space here. Again, these Commanders coming off a 12-5 season last year. Win total sitting at 9.5.
Yep.
Fairly even each way. A little bit of difference depending on where you get it at what book. Make the playoffs sitting around minus 150 ish. Miss the playoffs about one plus 115 to plus 130. To win the division, anywhere from plus 210 or plus 225. NFC 9-1 plus 850, and then Super Bowl champions anywhere from 18 to 20-1 here. So a team that is expected to make the playoffs by Vegas. Do you have any plays on futures or win totals for this team?
Win totals, I do not. I really wanted to take the under at 9.5, but at the same time, I can see them winning 10, 11 games again. I
Right.
think it's one of those things where it's kind of wait and see if opposing defenses catch up to Jaden Daniels and how their defense looks, being another year older.
Yeah. I will take their under 9.5.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise. Plus 105 over on DraftKings there. Look, they got a fairly tough schedule. They draw the NFC North and the AFC West.
Yeah.
Obviously, two of the better divisions there in football. I've also got questions on the offensive and defensive line. We talked
Sure.
about replacing Sam Cosmi. Larry Tunsil is a great player when he's on the field. He
Yes.
struggled with injuries. Like that Houston offensive line was awful. So
Yeah.
if we have a situation where Tumzel's struggling to stay on the field, there's no Sam Cosmi, and now you're
Mhm.
relying on some backups to take over there. That's going to be a little dangerous. Like this is a Washington Commanders offensive line that's not too far away from being pretty bad.
Yep.
And then the defense too. Can the pass rush get home? Dorrance Armstrong came on, had a decent year, but they got rid of Dante Fowler. They got rid of Jonathan Allen. Now you're relying on 40-year-old Von Miller and Javon Kinlaw, who's been unable to stay on the field. So I understand things broke right for them last year. They had a great year, but
Yep.
I have a hard time figuring that everything is going to go so smoothly this year.
Sure.
So I don't think they're going to get to double-digit wins. I don't think they're going to bottom out. I think Jaden Daniel gives them a good floor of about 7, 8 wins, maybe 9.
Yep.
But I don't have them getting to 10 wins. And if I'm going to take the under 9.5, then I'm going to take the missed playoffs at plus 130
Sure.
because, last year, 11-6 Packers were the 7th seed in the NFC. You needed at least, obviously, 11. I would say you need at least 10 wins to get there. So if I'm going to take the under, why not grab the nicer place at the missed playoffs at plus 130? I don't think a 9-win team is getting into the playoff NFC. So that's the two plays I'm going with there. Obviously, they're very similar. You might want to just play the one. I'd probably say the missed playoffs over the 9.5 just because you get a little bit more of plus money there. But I will take
Yep.
both because I think this is,
And who knows? The NFC is a pretty stout conference, anyways. Even if they get to 10 wins, just based on tiebreakers, they still might not make it.
right. Last year. I mean, hey, last year, 10-win team, 10-7 team did not make the playoffs. So, yep, those are my two plays for this team. What do you got over there?
So let's flip over to the player futures side of things, and this is a guy that we haven't talked about at all, but I know that you're a little bit of a fan of him, and that's Brian Robinson.
Oh, hell yeah.
B-Rob, I'm taking his over 775 and a half rushing yards at minus 110. He went over this total last year. He went over it in his rookie year as well. 2 years ago, he missed it by like 40 yards, but only played in 15 games. Last year, he only played in 14 games. And like I said, he did make this total. If we look at his 17-game average, if he's able to stay healthy the entire year, this is a guy that averages or would average 965 yards just based on his attempts and yards per carry. So,
Right.
you know, assuming that offensive line does take a little bit of a step up with Tunsil and the rookie, obviously don't have Cosmi for the majority, if not all the whole season, but he is their, ground and pound back. They have Austin Eckler there, but they use him more as a gadget guy.
Right.
So I do think that B-Rob gets over that 775.
No, yeah, absolutely. Love Brian Robinson. Guy's a stud. I mean, the dude got shot and then came back 4 games later. The
Right.
dude's I mean, he's a stud. Again, he's division rival, whatever. I think, I'm not as, you'll see as the episode goes on, but my hatred is not quite there as for, there for the Commandos because they've kind of been dog shit the past couple of years, past 2 decades really, other than the
Yeah.
RG3 spike. But yeah, no, Brian Robinson, love him. I will probably also be on that. I think for him to get to 800 yards, like you said, he did it in 14 games last year. I think they're going to need to have some of that running game. Maybe they're reining in Daniels, telling him to run less. Yeah,
Yep.
so I like that play. I think there's a lot of ways that he can get over that. So yeah, like that there. All right, for these Washington Commandos, first team in the NFC East. I am on the under and them to miss the playoffs. I think, hey, is it going to be a sophomore slump or are all these old dudes finally going to kind of father time finally going to play?
Yep.
Derek is riding Brian Robinson over 775 yards. We are both a fan of any man that can get shot in the leg and return to playing football in just 4 games.
100%.
And we're going to move on here to our next team in the division. Before we do that, I got to tell you guys about one of our awesome sponsors here, and that is Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Get a leg up on your opponents with Bob's 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. Purchase yours for a measly $15 on Amazon. Just search 2025 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Yes, 10th annual consistency. We are not talking Fast and Furious or, Rush Hour or Rocky or any other sequel. I could have just stopped at 2. It's 10th for a reason because people want it. So make sure you get it so you're not the only one left out in your fantasy league. Hey, we've got now the one, the only, the Dallas Cowgirls are up next. Look at that. Yes. No cheerleader picture for them this year. What they're probably most famously known for, because they haven't won anything of significance in the last 20 years. I mean, almost our entire
20, 30
lifetime.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that big star, which I will say, really cool stadium. Had the opportunity to go to Jerry's World. They do put on a damn good show, even though I think the screen's a little too big because I found myself watching the screen more than the actual field, and I didn't have bad seats. So, but enough rambling. The Dallas Cowgirls 7-10 last year because Dak hurt his little leg there. I wonder if that's the same leg he had to get put to sleep for his little tattoo. But we're going in and we're talking their free agency. And then Derek's going to give a much more unbiased opinion on how he feels this team looks for the 2025 season. Some losses here. Trey Lance is not going to the CFL or the UFL. He's going to LA to be probably their third string there at the Chargers. Rico Dowdle, after a 1,000-yard season, has been shipped off to Carolina. Brandon Cooks returns to the Saints there in New Orleans. Zach Martin, one of the best guards to play in a long, long time, has retired. Chauncey Golston and DeMarcus Lawrence. Golston going to my Giants to much, much greener pastures. And DeMarcus Lawrence heading over to Seattle. And then losing Kendricks and Joseph. And then Jordan Lewis, former Michigan man, is headed to Jacksonville. Now, with the additions, we've got Joe Milton, who came in and what? Did he? I think he kept the Patriots in the first number one. Or did they get? Yeah.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Kept them for the number one pick with his performance against Buffalo. Miles Sanders comes from Carolina. Javonte Williams comes over from Denver. George Pickens is the big one coming over from Pittsburgh. Dante Fowler coming from the division rival Commanders. Peyton Turner from New Orleans. And then we've got, a couple other guys on defense. Kyer Elam, which I love him because he's a Gator, but man, he's been pretty ass in the NFL.
Yep.
Pretty decent draft class, though. Tyler Booker coming from Alabama. Donovan Ezeruku, the defensive end. Siobhan Ravel, who was a really good corner for ECU, but it's coming off a major injury there with an ACL. And then Jadon Blue from Texas coming into a backfield that is wide open there. So a decent amount of additions and some losses, especially on the defensive and offensive line. What are your takeaways for this Dallas Cowboys team in the 2025 NFL season?
Overall, I don't know if their losses and additions really changed my mindset a whole lot with the Cowboys. I think obviously losing Zach Martin is a massive, massive loss. I mean, he's been an all-pro guard for better half of a decade at this point. You bring in the rookie Tyler Booker to fill his spot, who's an absolute tank, but he's not Zach Martin. And, from an offensive line standpoint, they've got younger over the past couple of years. They've taken a major downgrade in that respect. But you bring in a guy in George Pickens, who's by far the best wide receiver, too, that they've had since CD and Dak have been there in Dallas. But overall, I think last year got derailed pretty quickly as soon as Dak, injured his hamstring. However, he did that. It was just kind of a strange thing. All of a sudden, hey, Dak Prescott's out for the remainder of the season, and they were a shell of the Cowboys ever since then. But now that Dak is back, it'll be interesting to see if he gets that spike that we typically see when he is healthy, if he can stay healthy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And we'll kind of talk about that spike year after the injuries. Kind of done this before. But yeah, absolutely. You talked about the offensive line, and when I think of the offensive lines that I was growing up with, Tyron Smith, Martin, and all those guys. It's definitely been a changing of the guard. They've definitely had to get a lot younger. Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker, and Terrence Steele. A very young offensive line, especially compared to where they've came from. I get it. Guys get older, guys retire. You got to move on. But I
Right.
agree. It's definitely a clear downgrade from one of the dominant units. Can't wait for that to happen to the Philadelphia Eagles. Can we get rid of their damn offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata? Please get the hell out of there. But I think that they've got a ragtag group of the running backs. I kind of talked about it. We've
Yeah.
got Devontae Williams, Miles Sanders, and Jadon Blue, and then Deuce Vaughn still kicking over there.
Yep.
But yeah, that wide receiver duo and Pickens and CD Lamb.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit higher in Javonte Williams than you are. I always liked him when he was in Denver. It was
Right.
just one of those things that they just had a stable of running backs, and you just never knew how many carries Williams was going to get compared to some of the other guys. But yeah, George Pickens is an absolute threat.
Yeah, if he can keep his
Outside of
head on right, obviously you
yeah,
kind of have the
that's
worry of Mike
that.
Tomlin threw you to the side. That's probably not a good
Mhm.
sign
That's the
historically.
big question, right?
Yeah,
Mike Tomlin has a history of getting rid of wide receivers, pretty much stud wide receivers at the right time, and they haven't been able to recover. We think about Chase Claypool, and we think about Juju,
Claypool,
and all
yeah.
kinds of guys that
Antonio Brown,
Antonio Brown. Yeah, I mean,
Le'Veon Bell. Yeah,
exactly. Have some what we'll say character issues.
yeah,
Um,
slightly.
and George Pickens has been known to show that on the sidelines from time to time. So, will they be able to wrangle him in? Will Shoddy be able to wrangle him in as a rookie head coach? It'll be
Right.
interesting to see.
Right, especially a first-year head coach. If you're a fan of the team, you call it passion. If you're, an outsider looking in, you call it being a D or what the hell's going on. So,
Yeah,
health is another area I have some concerns for this team, and let's get right into it. We
sure.
talked about Mr. Dak Prescott had an avulsion fracture of his hamstring. So, a hamstring is a muscle on the back of your leg there, but it does connect to two bones there. And one of the bones through a tendon, the injury was essentially so bad the tendon ripped off a piece of the bone. It required surgery, which is why it was a year-long thing as opposed to, a couple of weeks that we usually see with hamstrings. So about a 4 to 6 month process. He does have 10 months from the injury to week 1 of the season. What do we think about Dak coming into the season?
Yeah, I think, assuming that he can stay healthy throughout the entire season, we should be expecting big things from Dak. He has plenty of time to get his hamstring and hips, doing his rotation thing. Um, and he should be good going this season. My biggest question is, will he be able to stay healthy behind that young offensive line?
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm right there with you. Yeah, this injury itself should be in the past, and he should be, looking healthy. But what's he going to look like, next season?
Yep.
But defensive side of the ball, two big injuries that I want to speak on here.
Yeah.
DeMarvion Overshawn, kind of like a linebacker safety hybrid player, really
Yep.
flies around the field. Really a good player for them.
Can be a stud.
Knee got exploded essentially
Mhm.
December 9th, 2024 against the Bengals, I believe.
Yep.
ACL, MCL, and MPL tear. You've only got 4 major ligaments in your knee, and he got a 3-for-1 special there.
Yep. And the
Very
most injured
unfortunate.
one was the only one that was fine. No, MCL was torn. Just kidding.
Yeah,
LCL.
MCL was
Okay,
torn.
cool.
Yeah, so he left the LCL out of the equation. But this is
Hanging on
at
by a
least an
thread.
11 to 12 month recovery process. This is a major, major, big deal.
Yep.
He's got only 9 months from when it happened to the start of week 1. I am expecting him to be on the pup and
Yes.
miss a decent amount of the season. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll start the season on the pup, and probably once he does return, they'll kind of ease him back into football, because we all know if you're not playing football, you're not in football shape. You're not getting better at football, and like you mentioned, he's kind of that swing safety linebacker position, and
Right.
he really relies on you know opening up his hips and really putting his knees in kind of strange
Change
positions
direction.
from time
Yeah.
to time because he has to change direction so much. So yeah, I think this is one of those where he'll probably not look like DeMar being overshown, until the back half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, if this year at all. Like I said, he's a good player for them. I do like him. So it's an unfortunate injury.
Yep.
Another one, Trayvon Diggs, who's been dealing with quite a few injuries recently. The cornerback there, he had a knee cartilage surgery. Essentially, dealing with an issue where the cartilage and it's a different knee than his ACL knee,
Yep.
so the opposite knee. but he's dealing with cartilage issue, which is, again, kind of prevents that friction and rubbing that bone on bone in your knee. He essentially had a procedure where they try to take a piece of cartilage out and let it regenerate and then put it back in.
Yep.
A bit of an experimental. We've seen some of these as physical therapists, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But he had that surgery done January 20th of this year. That's only gives him about 6.5 months, when this is typically more of an 8 to 10 month recovery timeline. It can vary. I mean, this is one of those
Yes.
surgeries that
No
is a
doubt.
bit weird. The ones that I've seen, sometimes they take and they do really well, and
Yep.
sometimes they don't. And so that this is going to be a really interesting one to see where this goes.
Yes, 100%. I think it's one of those things where he again will probably start on the pup list, and we'll see um, how he comes back, especially again, knee injury, a guy that has to flip his hips and change directions all the time. Yeah, it's just one of those wait and see kind of things.
Yeah, when you start messing with the cartilage in there, it's a last resort type of deal. Like, it's not something you want to, like a back injury or back
Yeah.
surgery or something like that. It's not one of the first things you want to go to.
And
You're going to try the PRP, you're going to try the
yes,
injections, all this other stuff.
yeah.
So we'll
And
see.
and if
We'll
it's one of
see.
those things that doesn't take, it might be one of those things
Oh, he's done.
where, yeah, I mean,
I think
where
he's
the
done. Yeah.
arthritis aspect really starts to come into play,
Right.
and it's just a bad sign
Yeah,
when we're starting to
it
get
would be
cartilage problems.
unfortunate. So hopefully for him and Cowboys fans everywhere, that it does take, and obviously he's getting some of the best medicine there is, but still,
Yes.
cartilage and stuff like this, a bit experimental. It is not quite cut and dry as some of these other surgeries are. All right, let's get into the fantasy space. Let's talk about Mr. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. What are you expecting out of this duo this year? Part of CeeDee Lamb's draw was that he was getting all the targets.
Yep.
Now, that can be good and bad, because if we know he's getting the ball, then the defenses know he's getting the ball. So
Yep.
how do you see this working out? Is it, a lot of people have CeeDee Lamb, and we have him pretty high, but top 5 wide receiver that they're going after there. Now you throw in George Pickens to the mix. How do you see this duo planning out in the fantasy space?
Yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb's still the guy. He's
Right.
had that connection with Dak for years at this point. He's a PPR nightmare because he does, wrangle in catches all the time. Where George Pickens isn't known necessarily for the amount of receptions that he gets, but when he does get one, usually it's a big one. Usually it's 15, 20, 30 yards downfield.
Right.
So from that aspect, I'm still a big CD Lamb fan because he does run the entire route tree. He'll catch screens and middle of the field kind of stuff, where George Pickens, he can do some of those things, but he's more of a deep threat. Hey, go up and get it kind of a receiver.
Probably the best deep threat receiver in the NFL right now. The way he plays the ball is
I wouldn't say best deep threat, but definitely best 50-50 ball receiver
contested
for
catch,
sure.
we'll call it. Yes,
Yes,
contested
100%.
catch. Yes, he really, the way he contorts his body and makes
Yes,
those catches, man. He makes some incredible catches.
no
But
doubt.
you're right, probably Jamar Chase would take the deep threat crown there. Yeah, I like both these teams. Are these players here? I think their passing game is going to work, and I'll talk
Yeah,
about it here in a little bit. But you know, I think for multiple reasons. One, you have two really good wide receivers. I think you got
yep,
a quarterback that, when he's healthy, he can distribute the ball.
yep.
And three, I think they're going to need to score. I talked about those two major
Well,
injuries on the
I
back
think they're
end.
gonna need to score, and I think it's gonna have to be through the passing game
Yes,
because the running
exactly.
game over the last couple of years has been awful, and you bring in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders that had okay years last
I'm not
year.
a
Yeah,
fan of the running back room at
I
all.
wouldn't necessarily am sold on either of those guys. Like I said, I'm a bigger fan of Javonte Williams, but again, the offensive line is not that great in Dallas.
Yeah. So yeah, I think both Pickens and Lamb can pay off, and
Yep.
even Dak is probably not a bad play there. All right, getting over to the betting space. 7-10 last year. Their win total is 7.5. A little bit of juice to the over. Obviously, if you want to go 8.5, then you juice to the under there.
Yep.
Make playoffs anywhere from plus or 2-1 to plus 180. Miss playoffs -220 to -245. NFC East anywhere from plus 550 to 6-1. To win the NFC, 22 to 25-1. And then to win the Super Bowl, 48 to 50-1 for those Cowgirls in Dallas. Any plays on win total, any of that stuff?
Nope. I kind of see them fairly similar to the Commanders this year. Could they, make a big jump and win 8, 9, 10 games? Potentially. Could I
Right.
see them falling off the face of the earth and winning 6, 7 games again? I could. So I'm staying away from all the playoff stuff and win stuff. I got a couple player props, but I'll let you take it away and talk about your
Yeah, looks
other
like
bets.
pretty lockstep where we're going to be with this team. I agree. I think that they their range of outcomes anywhere from 6 to 10 wins for me. So not really something I want to be playing the win total. Not something I feel super strongly about.
Yep.
But I do feel good about Dak Prescott having a bounce back year.
Sure.
When we look at Dak Prescott's career, every time he's kind of had either an injury ridden season or whatever it may be. In 2020, he only played 5 games. He came back and played 16 games, threw for 4,400 yards. Then in 2022, he only played 12 games because of injury. Then he came back in 2023 and threw for 4,500 yards. Right? 2019, he threw for 4,900 yards. So he really is a guy who bounces back after missing some games here, and I'm going to
Yep.
bet on that. So give me Dak Prescott 4,000 yards at plus 130 and 30 plus touchdowns at plus 240 over on DK. When he's healthy, this is what he does, and now he probably
Yep.
has the best wide receivers and tight ends he's had collectively. So there's no reason for him not to do that right again. So that's really my only plays is going to be surrounded around Dak Prescott, chucking the ball over the field because one, he's got the best weapons, and two, their defense again. I'm not like they might be really bad. They
Yeah.
might need to score a lot and throw and guard time, and all those yards count no matter where it comes from. So, what say you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's amazing that for those of you that don't know, we don't talk about our bets before the show. We basically just roll with it.
Right.
But I'm on Dax over 38, 38.50 and a half passing yards at minus 110. I'm gonna jump on the over 4,000 as well at plus 130. And for the most part, that's just because if he plays all 7 games, he's gonna average around 43, 4,400. That's a 17
Yeah.
game average over his career.
Yep.
So
Easily.
even if he misses 4 or 5 games, he could still get over that 38.50. Very well could get over 4,000 as well. But I will say I'm not all on Dax positives. I'm going to also throw out a little bit of a fly here and say that Dak Prescott throws the most interceptions in the league at 15-1. Last
Like that.
year,
I was looking at
last year he threw 8 picks in 8 games. 2 years before that, in 2022, he threw 15 in 12 games.
Yeah.
So even this is a guy that over a 17 game season, he would average about 11 and a half picks. So, it's just one of those things where he's done this before. He's led the league in picks before at 15. Could this be a year where, hey, we're throwing the ball all the freaking time?
Right.
And, he's trying to throw it up to CD or George Pickens on these 50-50 balls and they get tipped up and picked. So I'm taking that little bit of a long shot at 15-1
Yeah.
for the most picks.
I really like that 15-1, especially. Maybe we see another Jameis 30 for 30 year.
No doubt.
I mean, if we're
No
talking
doubt.
about a team that could get
We're,
a
we're
guy that
talking
could do
about
it,
the NFC East
I mean,
and
he's got the leash where they're not really gonna bench him. I know Joe Milton might be fun, but like they've
yeah,
put in much money to Dak Prescott. I don't really think you can bench him.
no doubt.
I think he's gonna have some success, but I also absolutely could see him throw the most interceptions. So I will be
Yeah.
adding that to my catalog there. So yeah, I really like that play, especially at a 15-1 price. I mean, I think he should be almost a favorite for this award, or maybe not an award, but whatever this accolade or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I like that. So, all right, for these Dallas Cowboys in the 2025 year, we see a bit of variability. We see a team that maybe not going to have a great defense, got some major injuries, but offense should go. And we are both on Dak Prescott to have a year, but we're also on him to maybe have a Jameis Winston-ass year and lead the league, both maybe in passing
Right.
yards and interceptions.
Yep.
So it'll be a fun season to see what Dak Prescott can provide for these Cowgirls. All right, let's tell you about we got going on in idpplus.com land. That is our flagship site. We want you to go ahead and check that out because we have a bunch of football content, especially if you are someone who appreciates all 22 players on the field, all aspects of football. Obviously, IDP in the name. We have started with defense and have branched out to covering the entire field, every square inch. So check out idpplus.com today and head on over and get in our subscribers only Discord. All right, look at that. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's the freaking Philadelphia Eagles. Unfortunately, I'm contractually obligated to talk about this team, which apparently is the defending Super Bowl champion. I'll tell you what, as soon as that ball kicks off on the 5th or 4th or 5th of September, that year it's the new year and they are no
Right.
longer I'm no more Super Bowl talk. We're focused on forward. But as we focus on the forward, I do have to say, yes, Philadelphia Eagles, reigning Super Bowl champions. Whoop de freaking do. Okay, glad for you to finally get multiple, and you still have the least in the division. Anyway, your Philadelphia Eagles coming off a 14-3 year last season. Let's talk their free agency. A lot of losses and a decent amount of additions here. So interesting because they took a decent amount of players from in the division. So we'll see how
Yeah.
that works out for them. All right, I'm going to break down their free agency, losses, additions, and Derek's going to give us a what's the overall takeaway here. So lost Kenny Pickett to the Browns, who may or may not be their starter this year. Kenneth Gainwell over to Pittsburgh. Paris Campbell, who's been passed around more times than, I don't know, what can I say, PG? I'm just thinking about maybe a blunt rotation. But yeah, Paris Campbell's been passed around quite a bit. I mean, he was on the Giants, then he was obviously on the Eagles. Now he's going to the Cowboys and never really gets any playing time. So interesting. Mekhi Becton, that is a pretty big loss. Someone who was basically from their off the streets program. And they
Yep.
really, I mean, Jason or Stallworth there, I can't wait until that guy retires. He just takes, anything and makes them to great offensive linemen.
All pro offensive lineman.
I mean, rugby players, anybody.
Yeah.
Branningham is retired. He has a torn triceps to go ahead and go with his Super Bowl ring there. Josh Sweat over to the Cardinals. Bryce Huff, who never really worked out for them, go to the 49ers.
Yeah.
Milton Williams, another starter on the defensive line, leaving, going to the Patriots. Oren Burks, who stepped up very nicely for them when Nakobe Dean went down, going to the Bengals. James Badbury, Isaiah Rodgers, Darius Slay, and CJ former Gator himself, all gone. So, definitely getting younger on the defensive line and the secondary. Guys they brought in, sure, DTR, AJ Dillon, don't expect much there. Neither do I. Terrace Marshall, Harrison Bryant. Kenyon Green does have a chance to kind of rotate in with, Steen there at the guard position after losing Becton. Azeez Ojulari coming over from my Giants, who looks great in spurts, but has never not gone a season without ending up in the IR. So we'll see how that looks for them. Josh Uche, former Michigan man. Adoree Jackson, who, again, is a guy who can show flashes, but will likely end up on the IR. And then the linebacker, Jahad Campbell, arguably the best linebacker coming out of college football from Alabama, but is dealing with a major injury. And then Andrew Makuba from Texas there. So they lost a lot, which happens when players, they get excited, they come off good years, and they want to make the most money they can. So you can't bring them all back. So it kind of makes sense there. What are you thinking with all this turnover there, especially on the defensive side of the ball for this Philadelphia Eagles team?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, the offense should look fairly similar. It'll be interesting to see, will Saquon be able to be the same guy that he was last year after a 400 carry year? But defensively, this team looks massively different.
Yep.
Losing basically probably I'll say 2/3 of their defensive line, losing a lot of guys out of their secondary in Slay and CJGJ. So, yeah, I mean, this is not the same Eagles defense that we've seen over the last couple of years that has been pretty damn dominant. And a couple of their other studs on defense are coming off of major injuries in Nolan Smith and Nakobe Dean. So, offensively, I still think they'll go and put up some points. But defensively, I have my doubts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, offense should look pretty much the same. I mean, Only thing I'll say is the offensive line does get another year older at the tackle position there for Mailata and Jelaine Johnson, but that's really just hopeful wishing because they've been studs.
Yeah.
And then the defense is completely changed, and I don't care what anybody says. I mean, we'll see. I know Eagles fans have been telling me, oh no, Josh Sweat's not that good. Brandon Graham didn't do much. Bryce Huff didn't do anything.
Yep.
Whatever they want to say. They got a lot of questions on the
Yeah.
defense,
I mean,
and
when you have guys that you can rotate in every other play and have
right,
that depth that they've had over the last couple of years,
it's just
that's
not there.
it's not
So
there anymore. Yeah, exactly. They may not have done as much statistically. That's just because they were only on the field a third of the time because they had guys just rotating through.
right, exactly. So we'll see again. I mean, look, the talent on the offense is there. The core is still there,
Yes.
but change is coming in Philadelphia. So we will see. And part of this change is we're going to talk about the injuries here. Let's start with the one offensive injury I want to speak to. Cam Jurgens, back surgery. We talked about back surgeries in previous episodes. They're a little bit wonky. It's not something you exactly want to do, but he
Yep.
was having some nerve pain. Hopefully, they were able to get to those nerves and just kind of, what they could have cinched him down, burned him down, whatever it may be. But we don't know the exact procedure there. We just know he had a back surgery to address nerve pain. Typically like 4 to 6 months. The impressive is that he played through it
Yeah.
in both the divisional round and the the conference championship and the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
They had a couple guys. Landon Dixon played through a knee injury.
Yep.
Nolan Smith tore his triceps during the Super Bowl. Like,
Right.
I will say, you cannot discredit the toughness of that Eagles team from
No
last
doubt.
season. So that is one thing I will say. But Cam Jurgens comes in, should be good on time. Back a little bit wonky. What are we thinking for Jurgens at that center position there?
Yeah, I think he'll, back, whether it's for week one, time will tell. Um, because I mean they brought in Kenyon Green at guard. I mean, I believe he's played some center
Most of them have.
over the
Yeah,
years, but
I wouldn't be
mostly
surprised.
guard. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if they moved him or Steen over there to center to fill in while Jurgens is gone. But he did a hell of a job filling in for Jason Kelsey
No, right.
last year.
Yeah,
I
he
mean, he
really did.
stepped right in, and that was one of the big questions last year. He filled a hole great.
Yep. Yeah, he
But
did.
yeah, I think it's one of those things where he'll probably be back week 1, 2, 3, something like that, and this
Yeah,
offensive
I would
line will go.
I would say it's more likely than not he's probably good to go. We'll
Yeah,
see. We'll monitor for training camp, but he should be good.
yeah,
Now on the defense, now we have some questions here.
yeah,
So let's start with the linebacker position in Nakobe Dean.
yeah.
On against the Packers in the divisional round, I believe, on the
Patellar
12th
tendon
of
tear.
January, patellar tendon tear, major injury.
Yes,
Takes about 8 to 10 months to recover. Not quite as long as an ACL, not quite as bad, but still not an easy injury to come back from. He's going to have 8 months from the injury date to week one of the season. I
yep,
expect him to be on the pup and come back maybe back half of the year, something like that. We
sure.
shall see. What say you on Nakobe Dean coming back from major knee there?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the patellar tendon tear, if for those of you that don't know, your patellar tendon is basically the continuation of your quad tendon, and your quads are the main muscle group right on the front of your thigh there. Big, powerful muscles that put a lot of force through the front part of your knee.
Yep.
So without that patellar tendon, your knee's not working right. And so from an injury timeline standpoint, definitely right there on the cusp of week one. I don't think you'll be back week one necessarily. I think this
Right.
is, maybe return week 3, 4, give him another 3 or 4 weeks to kind of work back into the swing of things, especially when they drafted Jahad Campbell, who's also coming off of a major injury. We'll see, if he's going to be able to give them a ton of production over the first, third of the season.
Right. Yeah. Let's get right into it. Jahad Campbell, right? They drafted him to kind of help out that Rivers or that linebacking core,
Yep.
expecting Dean probably not going to be back right away. But it's interesting because he has a labral tear,
Yep.
and he probably injured himself, back in late December. But he didn't have the surgery until after the combine, so he could kind of fight through it and produce. And then he
Right.
had surgery, so he didn't have surgery until like early March.
Yeah.
So that only gives him 6 months before week 1 to get back into the system and get back into football shape and all those things. This
Yep.
is typically a 6 to 8 month, recovery time with this labral tear. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, he may be able to play with the brace still and kind of,
Yep.
get out there and figure it out, but he's not going to be 100% by the time week 1 rolls around. So this is going to be an interesting situation between you got two guys at the same position who have a lot of potential, but are both coming off pretty significant injuries here.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of a team guy Jahad Campbell is, because it's one of those things where I could see him throwing a brace over his shoulder and him toughing through the first 4 or 5 weeks until Nakobe Dean can start, coming into the swing of things. Just not expecting a ton from him,
Right.
because anytime he takes a hit or makes a tackle into that shoulder, he's probably going to feel a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
labral tears don't necessarily worry me as much with defensive guys as quarterbacks,
Right.
obviously, who are
Right.
using their shoulders a ton. But they do take, some major abuse when it comes to making hits. So yeah, I think Jahad Campbell, I could see him starting the year, but I could also see him, kind of limping through the first half of the year.
Right. And I wouldn't blame him as a rookie. He knows Dean's probably not going to be out there the first month or so. So he
Right.
wants to kind of cement his legacy there for his new team.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big position of concern. You have
Yep.
Zach Bond on the other side at the inside linebacker spot,
Who
but
came
that,
on like a stud. Hey,
yeah,
look at you. Giving
I
some
guess
thumbs up there.
yeah, Zach Bond probably deserves a thumbs up, but yeah, that other inside linebacker spot is a question. If either
Well,
of
and
those
they
guys are
drafted
healthy,
Jeremiah Trotter the year before that, so he might be able to fill
sure,
in there a little bit as
sure.
well.
I mean, what was he like a 6th round pick? I mean, come
Something
on.
like that. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, he's not. Yeah, he was a 5th round pick, and he's had 25 tackles in his career. So we'll see. But if either of those guys were healthy, I think they're probably pretty solid there.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
just
no doubt.
they're just not. So we'll see. And then going on, Nolan Smith, a guy who tore his triceps in the Super Bowl and kept playing. That's pretty, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
More like a 4 to 6 month recovery timeline. He's got 7 months. He should be okay. I mean, we just saw Brandon Graham basically come back in like, oh gosh, it seems
Six,
like
8 weeks.
10 weeks, 8 weeks, or
Yeah.
something crazy like
Something
that.
something absolutely
I
insane.
mean, he was basically out there with one arm, but I mean, good
Yeah.
for him. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, I think Nolan Smith is someone we're gonna have a little bit more optimism on.
Yes.
He should have the full recovery timeline there.
Yep.
So some interesting things, some guys dealing with some injuries there, but really that inside linebacker 2 position is the one of concern. All right, let's talk about some of these fantasy takeaways here. Saquon,
Yeah.
the big question is, hey, do you like discredit what you just saw and him having an incredible situation, one of the better offensive lines, a quarterback that's a run threat, and having one of the best seasons the running backs ever had?
Yep.
Or like, do you discredit all that and say he's got too many carries, he's an injury risk? Or do you say the situation's basically the same, why would you fade this guy? That would be idiotic. Where are you at with it?
Yeah, I went back and forth with this one. I think I'm gonna be, skipping out on the Saquon Barkley train when it comes to fantasy, to be honest with you. I mean,
Mm,
depends on where I am, in that first round, because there's no way that he's getting out of the first round still.
right.
But at the same time, this is a guy that, historically hasn't been able to stay healthy. Last year was his first year since his rookie year that he played all well, they held him out of the 17th game, but he would have
Right,
played the
right,
17th game, played
right,
all the games that he was available for.
correct.
But this is a guy that averages about 1,300 yards a season. This is the first major outbreak that we've seen from Saquon Barkley. Obviously, his offensive line is way better than any that he had when he was with your Giants there. But
Mhm.
I do see him taking a little bit of a step back, partially due to the amount of workload that he had last year. And two, is the dude going to stay healthy? Because again, he's only played in all 16 games a couple other times.
Yeah, well, this is interesting. I did not expect this, but as the Eagles hater, yeah, Saquon Barkley is my RB3. He's right behind Bijan and Jameer Gibbs, and right
Oh,
in front of Derrick
don't,
Henry.
yeah, I would still say he's my RB3 too. But I think early on, I would be hesitant to take Saquon over some of the top wide receivers like Puka and CeeDee Lamb and some
Right,
other guys.
right, right. Okay, that's fair. I mean, yeah. So
Yeah,
I
if
won't
he's there at 8,
be fading
hell yeah, I'm taking
Saquon.
Saquon Barkley.
Right. I won't be fading Saquon. Yeah, I don't like, I'm not gonna be
I'm
drafting
not taking
him
him in the top
above.
5, we'll put it that way.
Right. Okay. Top five, yeah, not for me. Top 10, yes. Top five, no.
Yes.
For Saquon there. But I think he's gonna have another good year. It's gonna be unfortunate. We'll see. I'm gonna keep my good karma, and we don't wish any injury on anybody here. We just break them down. So we will see. It is a
Right.
lot of touches, but dude's a freak. So we'll kind of see there. He's set up in the perfect situation. I said it last year. He
Yep.
was probably going to have a really good year. I'm saying it again. He's got the perfect situation. He's a great running back. So
Yep.
we'll see what happens there. All right, let's move on to the betting space here. 14-3 last year. Win total, if you go the 10.5 route, you're playing heavy juice for the over. If you go the 11.5 route, it's a little bit probably more easy to kind of get to there. Over about plus 110, under minus 130. To make the playoffs, heavy favorites, minus 375 to minus 450. Miss the playoffs, you can get it anywhere from plus 285 to plus 340. To win the division, they're around minus 130, minus 145 favorites. To win the NFC, they are about 3-1, sometimes plus 370 you can get. And to win the Super Bowl, anywhere from plus 650 to plus 750. So obviously one of the top dogs in the NFL because they just won the damn thing.
Yep.
Where are we at with this Eagles team? Do we like any of their futures, win total, anything like that?
I'm staying away from all of the above, mainly because this NFC East is just all over the place year after year after year. It's been over 20 years since a team has repeated as NFC East champions. And,
Yeah.
the Eagles had a dominant year last year, but just historically, the NFC East has been a little bit of a grind and teams don't necessarily repeat. So I'm staying away from all of the above. But at the same time, I can still see them making the playoffs. I can still see them rattling
Right.
off 12 wins. It's just one of those things where historically it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, they're going to be a good team.
Yeah.
They've got way too much offensive talent, barring anything crazy injury wise. They're going to be a solid team.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be as good last year. I think their defense is going to be pretty significantly worse, actually.
Agreed.
If I had to say, between the defensive line and the secondary, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Degen are great players, but
Yep.
you got a guy like Keely Ringo you're going to have to rely on who's never
Probably
really
not getting
been
as
able to
much
do
push
it.
up front. Yeah.
I have questions at the safety position still. Again, that pass rush we talked about, you don't have the depth there. So yeah, I think that the offense is gonna have to do a little bit more. And getting into that, my play here, I've got one play on this. I've kind of got two, but around one guy, it's Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
One thing I think is going to happen a lot is I think they're going to run the tush push a fuck ton. I think they've got a
Haven't been
chip on their
outlawed yet.
shoulder, and I don't blame them
Yeah.
for. I think it was extremely soft for the NFL to come together and try to ban a play that's completely legal
Yeah.
and that you can run yourself. So I don't get that. So give me Jalen Hurts over 12.5 rush touchdowns at minus 1/5 over at DraftKings there. He had 14 last year, even with Saquon Barkley. He's
Yep.
hit this number in hold on one second. Where's his numbers at? Yes, he's hit this number in the past 3 seasons, having 13, 15, and 14 touchdowns. They're a run first team, and when they're around the red zone, I mean, he's liable to just get in almost every single game.
Yep.
But I am going to take his under 19.5 passing touchdowns. He
Okay.
only had 18 last year. He's kind of been around this number in his career. My kind of philosophy with this is when they're around the red zone, it's just going to be the Saquon and Jalen Hurts leg show.
Yep.
I just think that's like what they do. I mean, they're just going to rely on the offensive line and just either tush push their way in, or just Barkley is going to run for it, or whatever it may be.
Yep.
I know it's a low number, but again, he only had 18 last year. With him running so much, he does carry an injury risk that any running quarterback has.
Sure.
So I that's where I'm going to be at there. I couldn't give all good news for these Eagles, so I'll go the over rushing touchdowns, the under on the passing touchdowns. They're obviously a little bit correlated. I
Yep.
think he's going to get do a little bit more of the tush push because I think they're going to want to give a big fuck you to the rest of the league
Yeah,
just to make a point. And if there's one coach that's an asshole enough to do it, it's Nick Sirianni. So,
sure.
all right, what do you got for the Eagles?
Yeah, I'll co-sign your under 19 and a half passing touchdowns, which I'm not going to spend a ton of time because I agree with basically everything that you just said. So, yeah, give me Hurts under 19 and a half at plus 110. I do think they like to pound the rock, like you mentioned, whether it's Saquon, whether it's Jalen Hurts around the goal line. Giving the Eagles to score at least one rushing touchdown in every regular season game, all 17 at 6-1.
Okay.
And then let me flip back over to Saquon and talk about him a little bit more since we haven't already enough. But Saquon had a hell of a year last year, over 2,000 yards, probably would have broken the single season rushing yards record if it wasn't for holding him out against your New York Giants, which I'm
Right.
still a little bit salty that I didn't get the 3+ touchdowns against the Giants last year. But I'm taking his under 1450 and a half this year. The only season that he's gone over this number was last year. And historically, he's a guy that does pick up some injuries. Again, we don't necessarily want to wish injury on anybody, but it just hasn't happened all that often with Saquon. So, yeah, give me his under 1450 at minus 110, I believe. Yeah, minus 110.
Yeah, I mean, 1,400 yards in a season is still a pretty damn good year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
at some
Oh,
point
yeah.
it does get too high, and you do have to start, factoring in for the offensive line. It's very similar, but there is some changes. You got Jurgens with the back. You got rid of Mekhi Becton. How's Steen going to step in there?
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, their greatest predictor of injury is previous injury to those body parts. He's had high ankles. He's had ACL. Like,
Exactly.
he's a running back, and he's getting close to his 30s, and he's had a lot of touches. So we'll see.
Yep.
Again, not someone we're directly fading. Well, you are in this sense, but I don't. I mean, I think Saquon Barkley can have a good
I
year
can still see
and
him running
have
for 1,300 plus yards,
right
and
under.
that's a hell of a year for 98% of running backs.
Right,
So
right, exactly. So, all right, for these 2025 Philadelphia Eagles, still expecting them to be a good, solid team. Definitely expect them to be in the postseason. However, some changes on defense. A lot of change on defense, some changes in the offensive line. That core group for the offense should be together. Saquon and Jalen Hurts should do their thing on the ground. However, the concern for touches is there. We think they're going to do most of their work through the ground and really going to hammer that tush push in. Derek taking them to score a rushing touchdown in every game at plus 6-1, and me taking the over 12.5 rush touchdowns for Jalen Hurts there. That is quite enough about the Philadelphia Eagles for this
says a
season.
Giants fan.
Yes, now we're about to move on to the greatest team to walk this earth. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about the Fantasy Football Expo, the 2025 Fantasy Football Expo, kicking off August 8th through the 10th in beautiful Canton, Ohio. There, go to the fantasyfootballexpo.com to get your tickets now today. You don't, we've got less than a month left, so jump on that, folks. And then our friends over at Fast Draft Fantasy, it is prime fantasy season, and you only want to do it over at Fast Draft Fantasy. Look, folks, nobody likes a slow drafter. It's a best ball format with 20 seconds on the clock, all drafts under 10 minutes. This is very simple. Download Fast Draft Fantasy today. Use promo code plus Degen Doc. Deposit $50 and boom, a free $50. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Now it is time to talk about the 2025 New York Football Giants. Life is simple. Yes, it is. Look, this is a Giants team. We're focused on the future here. All right. This is the 2025 season. I don't know what the hell that was.
Whoa. Popping off over there. Getting a little excited. Hey, don't get too excited. You just had mouth surgery a few days ago.
Loads over here. So, 2025 season for the Giants. We're looking forward.
You're taking your shirt way too seriously, dude.
Enough of this looking in the back view mirror. We are looking forward to the 2025 season. We've got a fresh new quarterback room. We've got the quarterback of the future. We've got our bridge quarterback. We got a dynamic duo in the running back room, and we got the best wide receiver in the football and probably the best defensive line.
Did you just say you have a bridge quarterback? You have like 6 bridge quarterbacks.
All right, relax. Okay, here we go. New York Giants. Let's get into it. As we do with every team, We're going to start with the losses and additions, which I can tell you right now, the losses don't mean shit because they're a bunch of losers. But we're going into the additions. Now, I'll break down their free agency. Derek's going to give a way less biased opinion on what this team's going to look like 2025. We're going to talk injuries. We are going to talk fantasy, and we are going to, of course, going to give you our best bets for this New York Football Giants team. So let's get to these losses. Quarterback Drew Lock, thank you for letting us not have the number 1 pick overall and beating the Indianapolis Colts on that day. You are back in Seattle. Darren Waller, the rapper / tight end, who I talked myself into 2 years ago. Now Miami Dolphins fans are going to talk themselves into after not playing a football for a year. Good luck down there in South Beach. Azeez Ojulari and Adoree Jackson, they follow Benedict Barkley and become absolute traitors and never were Giants as they head on over to Philadelphia. Hopefully they can stay healthy because they haven't done it their entire year. Isaiah Simmons goes to Green Bay, and then Jason Pinnock, a pretty good player there, goes to the 49ers. Now we're talking about who are the new kids on the block. Quarterback carousel has changed. No more Daniel Pennies Jones. We now have Dangerous as the QB1. You got Jameis Winston being the quarterback whisperer and, the vibes locker room guy, QB3. And then QB2 is the rookie, the future Jackson Dart coming out of Ole Miss University there. You brought in James Hudson over from the Browns, Chauncey Golston from the Cowboys, Roy Robertson Harris. Big free agency moves here. Paulson Adebo coming to be our cornerback number 1 from New Orleans. Javon Holland, a really good safety from Miami. And then, of course, the draft. You talk about Abdul Carter, arguably the best player overall in the draft at defensive end. Darius Alexander from Toledo. And then Cam Skattebo coming in from Arizona State. A lot of changes, a lot of reasons why I'm hopeful. But let's hear it, Derek. What do you think, losses, additions? Hopefully you're going to tell me they got better because it's hard to get worse from where we were at last year.
Yeah, I think they did get better. So there you go. I still definitely have some questions about the Giants, but I think they got major have major improvements on the defensive side of things. They finally got a number 1 corner in Paulson Adebo.
Right.
Obviously, they bring in another stud up front in Abdul Carter. I'm not quite sure if he was the top guy in this draft. I think Travis would be there for me. But quarterback-wise, you got a room. I don't know if you have a quarterback that is going to lead your team to a great season by any means. But you got Russ, you got Jameis, you got Jackson Dart. It'll be interesting to see who's going to be the starter throughout the year. My guess is we might see all 3 of those guys from time to time. But I do think they got better. You still got Malik Neighbors and some hopefully progression in his abilities there in New York. Outside of that, defensively, again, I still have some questions at the linebacker position, secondary, but up front, their defensive line is pretty damn stout with Dexter Lawrence and Carter and Brian Burns and all of those guys. So I think they got better. Am I expecting them to win the division? No.
That's okay. We can temper expectations for now. It's early in the offseason. But yeah, no, look, I'm gonna say this. Yes, obviously a little bit biased, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. But the defense is gonna be good next year. I mean, it better because it greatly improved the secondary. We have a cornerback 1. We brought in a stud safety, and this defensive line. Like when the Giants were good, when we won in 07 and 11. It was through the defensive line and the offensive line. And they're finally investing and bringing back in the defensive line. You got Dexter Lawrence, you've got Abdul Carter, you got Kayvon Thibodeau, and you got Brian Burns. That is a nasty pass rush situation. And now you got a better secondary. I can almost guarantee the defense is going to be better. The offense, we'll see.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, because last year they were looking a lot better until Andrew Thomas went down.
Yeah, and that's what the entire offense is. He's the linchpin, and he's coming off a list rank injury. October 13th, he injured himself. Finished the game, but yeah, he injured himself against the Bengals, where Joe Burrow ran for that 50-yard touchdown. We should have beat the Rams. That was a crazy game. I still think about that. But 11. Look, this is about a 9 to 10 month typically a recovery timeline. He's at 11 months now. Of
Yeah.
course, he did say he's up and moving around, walking, all that stuff. He didn't commit to a timeline when he's coming back, which you never want to hear a player not do that. But per expected recovery timelines and everything, we'll see in training camp. But he should be good to go for week 1, at least not week 1, then early on in the season.
Yep.
So what do you say? A Liz Frank injury, not exactly what you want,
No.
but he
I
did
think he'll
have.
be good. I think he'll be good to go. And for your sake, I hope so. But yeah, I think Andrew Thomas will be good to go. He will shore up their offensive line yet again.
Yeah, I mean, because he's such a big. I mean, I will tell you, he is the catalyst.
He is the unit.
Right. So because we're going to keep a close eye on this and see how he's progressing.
Yeah.
We'll see, but he should be with 11 months of recovery timeline. He should be good to go.
Yeah.
Malik Neighbors dealing with a turf toe injury. Kind of had it for the past couple years, going back to college. He missed some OTAs. Big deal in my mind. He's expected to be back from training camp. If he starts missing in training camp, this is a different situation. But I mean, the guy's dealt with this in the past, and he's still done what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really concerned. What say you?
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where in the middle of the season, this is a bitch. Yeah. But he's had plenty of time in the offseason to get this right. Hopefully he's taken his rehab and kind of ran with that and put that as the priority. But he should be good to go. Like you said, if he starts missing some time and sitting out in training camp, this might be another story, but he's good.
Yeah. And then Paulson Adebo, the big free agent addition coming over from New Orleans. Last time we saw him on the field, he was getting carted off with a air cast. He had a femur fracture, pretty nasty looking injury. However, typically these fractures only take about 4 to 6 months to heal. He's got 11 months of recovery time just around there. We've seen videos of him moving around very well. As interesting as it is, as long as it's not like a very complicated a la Alex Smith type fracture.
Yep.
I would much rather my guy have a fracture than any type of ligament or kind of muscle.
Oh, no doubt.
Coming in from
any soft tissue stuff. Yeah.
Although this, looks worse, it's actually kind of a better outlook for Paulson Adebo this season. Any concerns on your end?
Nope, not at all.
Perfect. All right, let's move on over to the fantasy space here. Got a couple guys I just want to hit on. Malik Neighbors. I think what makes him so intriguing is the fact that when you look around, like, it's Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slay, and, Jalen Hyatt, whatever. But, like, how do you not get this guy well over, 100?
10, 12 targets a game?
Yeah. Yeah. I just think the target share has to be there, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially with quarterbacks Russ and Jameis and maybe Jackson Dart. I guess we haven't seen him in the NFL, but they're going to feed their number one target, and that's by far going to be Malik Neighbors.
Yeah. Now let's talk about something with a little bit more of question mark, and that's that running back room. You've got Tyrone Tracy, you've got Devin Singletary, and you add Cam Scatterbo to the mix. I am a Tyrone Tracy believer. This is a guy who was a converted wide receiver from Purdue. He's only been playing the position for 2 years. I think he looked great last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he really came on strong once we realized that Devin Singletary kind of sucks. He had 839 yards with less than 200 carries, averaging 4.5 yards. He needs to clean up the fumbles a little bit, but I do believe going into the year, he's going to be the RB1. Look, Cam Scatterbo is an awesome player. I loved watching him at Arizona State. I love that he's on our team. I think he can absolutely take away from some of the red zone touchdowns that Tyrone Tracy has. But I think Tyrone Tracy is the RB1. And now, I mean, where we're talking about him getting drafted, I mean, I've seen many drafts where Cam Scatterbo was getting drafted before Tyrone Tracy. Where are you at in this situation?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Tyrone Tracy almost has to be your RB1. I mean, Cam Scatterbo, great story, great player, but he's a college running back, it seems like to me. I mean, he's a guy that dudes in college bounced off of. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, Scatterbo reminds me of a Toby Gerhart or even like a Tim Tebow kind of a thing, where college, you're bigger and badder than everybody. In the NFL, that's not the case anymore.
Right.
So Tyron Tracy is definitely more of an explosive running back, like you mentioned. He's still pretty green when it comes to the position, but he can definitely be that guy that still holds the majority of the carries.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy, I think is gonna be one of my guys in fantasy this year. I just think his value and where he's being drafted just does not match at all.
Agreed.
And then last guy I talk about Darius Slayton. So Mr. Danger Russ, as you are familiar with, coming over from Pittsburgh now,
Yeah, yeah.
does one thing pretty damn well, and that is his very vintage classic moon ball that he throws over the top. Now, I would love to sit here and tell you that Jalen Hyatt, this matches very well with what he did at Tennessee, but I can't trust that guy more than you can throw him. But Darius Slayton has been our most consistent wide receiver since he's came in the league, and he has been a deep threat target.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be an interesting situation for Darius Slayton to have a bit of a year, maybe get flirt with that 1,000-yard season because of those moon balls. Am I being a crazy optimistic fan, or can you see a path of Russ and these moon balls benefiting Darius Slayton?
I could see it. I don't think it's gonna happen necessarily, especially when you have a guy in Malik Neighbors,
Right.
who's gonna be getting the majority of the targets. I think it's one of those things where he's a boomer bust for me. Could he go, absolutely bonkers and have 130 yards and a touchdown one week, and then the next week have 2 catches for 15 yards? 100%.
Right. Definitely more of a best ball player, right?
Yes.
Someone like that. But last round you can get him for pretty damn cheap. Someone I'm keeping my eye on at least. All right, let's get into it. 3-14. Not fun last season for these New York Giants, but greener pastures, as I say. Win total over at 5.5. Juice to the under a little bit. Futures. Let's just talk through them just for my amusement here. Make playoffs, anywhere from 650 to 8-1 over on ESPN Bet. Miss the playoffs, this is incredible. Minus 1,600 over minus 1,100. Win the NFC East, their own division, 25 and 30-1 to win the conference, 110 to 80-1, and to win the Super Bowl, 230 and 200-1.
Yikes.
Sounds like I'm going to be a rich man this season. No, I mean that's embarrassing that these futures are so high, but hey, I
Yeah,
have to talk about them. So, are you playing any of these futures or a win total?
I am.
Okay.
And this isn't because sometimes I like you,
Oh,
but I will be taking the over 5.5 wins
smart
at
man.
plus
Smart man.
125. And part of this is due to Brian Daboll's, he's coaching for his job at this point, but
Yep.
you got a much more, what should I call it? Veteran quarterback room that I think the floor is around 5 wins, to be honest with you. I think Russ gives you enough to, I think he brings a quality floor. And from an offensive line standpoint, if Andrew Thomas stays healthy, defensively they should be a hell of a lot better. I think over 5.5 is a lock for your New York Football Giants.
I love it because I'm also on the over 5.5 plus 125 over at DraftKings. Defense keeps you in games.
Yep,
Defense keeps you competent and lets you be competitive. I think this is the best defense in the division. We will see, but to me, on paper, I have questions about Dallas and their injury situation. I have
sure.
questions about the Eagles and all that they've lost in their changeover. I have questions about the Washington Commanders and if they can get their hips in place and do what they can over at the retirement home. So I think you have a good defense. Yes, you have some good offenses in the NFC East, but I think a good defense will keep that competitive. And then
Yeah,
the other sides of the ball, I just talked about it. The offense is the question mark for us, but the defense is the question mark for the rest of the division. So I think they're going to be able to take some games in the division. Also, they're playing a fourth place schedule, so that gives
yep,
you some more favorable matchups there against some of these teams. It is still a tough schedule. Again, I talked about it. They draw the AFC West and they draw the NFC North, two of the better divisions in football, but they only got to get to 6 wins. And I think they can grab 2 or 3 in the division. And I think between playing teams like New Orleans, playing teams like New
Banter.
England,
Yep.
Minnesota, the Raiders, I think there is wins out there. So give me the over 5.5 for the New York Giants. I'm not going to give out officially any of the other crazy futures play. Will I have some in my personal portfolio? Probably, but as in good conscience, I cannot give those out on this show. All right, any player prop stuff that you have?
Yeah, give me Neighbors over 1,150 yards. He did this last year with who at quarterback?
Yeah. Let's not talk about
Exactly. So we got Russ coming in, we got Jameis coming in. Both of those guys like throwing the deep ball. And Neighbors is another guy that can make some of those contested catches, and he's going to get the majority of the targets. There's no doubt about it. So give me Neighbors over 1,150.5 yards at -110.
Love it. Yeah, love it. I mean, he had 170 targets in 15 games last year.
Yep.
There's no way he doesn't get there, barring anything catastrophic. So I've got a couple player props. I've got three. I'm going to go through them kind of fast because I've kind of hit on most of these guys. We'll start with the two offenses, and I'm going to finish off with a defensive play here. Darius Slayton, I just talked about him. He is the long shot guy. He only had 2 touchdowns last year, but I'm expecting him to be on the back end of those moon balls more. Give me 5+ touchdowns at plus 225 over on DraftKings. I would love to play an over on his receiving prop. They just didn't really have one out there. But he had, his rookie year had 8 touchdowns. He had 4, not last year, but in 2023. He's got more competent quarterback play, and he's the deep threat. So I do like him there. I also like Tyrone Tracy, 1,000+ rush yards at plus 225 over on DraftKings. We talked about it. I think he's going to be the RB1. I think this offensive line has actually grown to a level of competence, especially with Andrew Thomas there and the work they've done in the interior offensive line. So I think that he's going to be at 1,000 yards there. And then the other one that I want to spend some time on, Dexter Lawrence. 7+
Dexy.
Sexy Dexy, baby. The best defensive line. Let's talk defensive tackle in the game of football. Since Aaron Donald has retired, it's Sexy Dexy. The dude had 9 sacks in 9 games last season before going down with a bit of an injury there. Led the team in sacks last year. So you can get him at 7+ sacks at -105. You can get him for 10+ sacks. So just one more, even though he only played 12 games last year, at 5-1. And you know what? I'm swinging big. Give me Dexter Lawrence to have the most sacks in the NFL at 150-1. Obviously,
I don't know about that one, but I like your 7 and 10. I think Abdul Carter and Thibodeau or whatever his name is.
Yeah, well, here's what's going to happen. I'll tell you right now. We're going to bring out the NASCAR package. You're going to have Abdul Carter on one end. Actually, no. It'll be Thibodeau and Burns on the edge. You'll have Carter bouncing around in the middle. They're going to force the pocket. They're going to step up. And who are they going to step up into? Big old Sexy Dexy. He's going to benefit from that defensive line. So I will be playing also. I couldn't find the number in any of the books, but team to have the most sacks to be the New York Football Giants. That will be absolutely on my card. So just throwing that out there. Don't have a number there. But yeah, that is where we're at. Obviously, these New York Football Giants. Hey, we are both one biased and one unbiased host on the over 5.5 for these New York Football Giants. Big Neighbors fans. We also believe in Tyrone Tracy as the RB1. Yep. Darius Slayton can benefit from some moon balls, and Dexter Lawrence and the defensive line is going to be having multiple sack parties this year. That is how we see this 2025 New York Football Giants season playing out.
That's right.
All right, my friend. It was a long one, but we've done it. 90 minutes of the best division in all of football, according to me at least, and the Super Bowl trophies that we talk about here. I know I'm mostly all talked out. Do you have anything for the good people before we get on out of here?
Shoo! I think this is finally the last NFC.
We are done.
We're done with the NFC. We're moving on to the AFC next.
Yep.
So be ready for the AFC division previews. We'll be throwing out some team previews after all of the divisions have been completed. But after that, if you guys have any ideas as far as what you want to see on the bet side of things, fantasy side of things, we're open for ideas. Any feedback is is definitely welcome, especially when it's positive feedback. You know, one of us is much better looking, one of us looks like a chipmunk, so we'll see.
All right, let's calm down here. Let's get him out the soapbox, folks. But like you said, we did. This is the last of the NFC. We've done the NFC North, South, East, and West. We are now moving on to the AFC. The goal is to get all these division previews knocked out before the Hall of Fame game there, before the end of July, and then we'll start releasing team previews and such. So, like Derek said, leave us a comment. Let us know, especially if you're an NFC East or East fan. Let us know what you think it's going to be like. And if you're from any of these other little divisions, sure, you can give your opinions as well. But look, folks, we appreciate any love as a newer channel, especially if you're riding with us at an hour and 34 minutes in. Give us a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what's up. We are stoked for the season. We are getting these bets out to you early as we can because we know these numbers are going to change. So we advise you, if you like one of the bets we're giving out, take it now so you get the benefit of a good number. All right, folks. From the Degen Doc and Professor Locks here at IDP Plus Bets, we are out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.